I'll now take the sediment of the Planning Local Review Body by roll call. The following members are present: Councillors Ali Callison, Maureen Devlin, Isabel Dorman, Mark Horsham. I have apologies from Councillor Anne LeBlond. Councillor David McLaughlin, are you present?
Yeah.
Thank you. And the following members are also present: Councillors Graham Scott, David Shearer and Jim Modtaw. I've also noted the officers in attendance, and I'll now pass you back to the Chair for today's business. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Do we have any declarations of interest? Don't see any hands. Agenda item 2 is a review of case in terms of planning application P210342. That's in pages 5 to 78. So the item before us today is a notice of review from Mr. Scott Templeman. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the conditions of approved as planning officers and determining that the approval of application for retrospective planning permission for extension to decking at 57 Reigate Street, Larkhall. The planning advisor will first describe the background to the report and review to members. I'll pass it over to James for that. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Chair. This local review relates to 2 conditions attached to a planning application that was granted permission in December 2021 for the extension to existing decking at number 57 Reigate Street in Larkhall. The application was in retrospect, and the extension to the decking had been carried out without the benefit of planning permission. Following discussions with the enforcement team, the retrospective planning application was submitted. The application site is a mid-terrace bungalow in an established residential area within the settlement boundary of Larkhall. The property has a long rear garden which runs northeast from the rear elevation. The decking measures 3.7 metres wide and 5.2 metres in length. The height of the decking is 0.69 of a metre, and it is the height of the decking that resulted in the requirement for an application for planning permission, as any decking above half a metre breaches the criteria for decking to fall within permitted development. The decking is made from wood and forms a level area within the garden, as well as a raised planting area forming the rear boundary of the decking. On each side boundary of the garden, a fence approximately 1.8 metres from ground level runs the length of each side boundary. The fence has not been raised as part of the decking development, and therefore at the point of the decking, it is approximately 1.1 metres in height from the decked area. The recommendation for approval noted that the decking was of good design, but that there was a concern that by raising the ground level of the garden by 0.69 of a metre without raising the boundary fence resulted in an impact on the residential amenity of both side neighbours in terms of overlooking. 2 conditions were therefore added to the permission. Condition 1 required that within 3 months of the date of the decision, a 1.8 metre high screen fence should be formed along both side elevations of the decking. This condition was to safeguard the residential amenity of the area. The second condition required that within 1 month of the date of the decision, the details of the fence required by condition 1 was to be submitted and approved in writing by the council. Statutory neighbour notification was carried out, and 1 letter of objection was received raising concerns regarding the impact on privacy and overlooking caused by the decking. It is noted that this objection has been reiterated following notification of the submission of this review. The application was not of a scale and nature that required any statutory consultation. In assessing this local review, the local review body are respectfully requested to consider the following relevant policies of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, which are Policy 3, General Urban Areas and Settlements, which requires proposals within urban areas and settlements to be non-detrimental to the amenity of residents and the wider community and to the character of the surrounding area. Then we have Policy 5, Development Management and Placemaking, which advises to ensure that developments take account of the principles of sustainable development, and all proposals require to be well designed and integrated with the local area. Proposals should have no significant adverse impacts on the local community and the environment. Where appropriate, proposals should include measures to enhance the environment and address the 6 qualities of placemaking. Then finally, Policy DM1, New Development Design, which requires that new development promotes quality and sustainability in its design and layout, and should enhance or make a positive contribution to the character and appearance of the urban environment. It is these policies that provide the development plan basis for considering the application. And finally, Chair, the review body should note that the appellant considers a site inspection would be of assistance to the review body. Thank you.
Thank you, James. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with the review. As James has just said, the applicant has indicated that a site inspection would be of assistance to the review body. Taking into account what we have in the review, we have detailed pictures. We'll have to decide if we do contain sufficient information for us to determine the review body, or if we need more information, a hearing or a visit to the site. I think that all the information that we have, plus the detailed photographs we have of the site, does provide us with all we need to consider the review, without either a site visit, a hearing, or further information. Any comments? Information?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. We'll then proceed with the review. Can I summarise the points made? The application is for retrospective planning permission for the extension to decking at 57 Reigate Street, Larkhall. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within a residential area. The application has been approved subject to two conditions relating to the installation of screening of 1.8 metres on either side of the decking, condition 1, and that the proposed screening requires to be approved prior to installation, condition 2. If we consider that the proposal does, in the current form, create an element of overlooking into the gardens of neighbouring properties that, unless screened, would have a significant adverse impact on the amenity of these neighbours in terms of overlooking and privacy, the proposals would not accord with Policy 5 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, and the conditions relating to screening should still be imposed upon permission. Or if we consider that proposed development would not have an adverse impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties in relation to overlooking and privacy, we could grant planning consent without the imposition of the planning conditions. Our options are to uphold or reverse or vary the planning determination. Anyone get any comments? Graham?
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm reading through the papers here, and the only thing that jumped out from the papers is I think it's page 61. It's in the applicant's own handwriting in the notice of review section, if members can have a look at that. And it's obviously he makes a point that he wants this overturned because the person who originally made the complaint no longer lives there. And there's a very interesting section that I'll read. The only change in privacy would be the external camera the new resident at 57A has installed, which now means that they can hear all our conversations in the garden and play them back if desired. Really? My view would be that the original decision by the planning officers was wholly correct and the conditions wholly correct. But again, I must admit, I found that, I'll be very charitable and say, a bizarre comment to make in relation to an appeal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Alec?
Yeah, just confirmation, first of all, James, that the condition applied to both sides of the garden. Is that correct?
If I may, Chair, yes, it was for both sides of the decking that the condition relates to.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the pictures, then one side has a hedge that I don't think putting an extra wee bit in the fence is actually going to make the slightest bit of difference on that side, because the view is blocked anyway by the hedge on the other side. Regarding the height on the other, down the left-hand side, Yeah, he's over the half metre, but if he'd left it at half a metre, you're only got 1 of a metre difference in the height of the fence. Is the height going to be material? Because it's a slatted fence, you can see through it. I'm not sure that I can understand what you're saying regarding the different policies, but it seems a wee bit lacking in common sense, to be quite honest. I don't know. I don't think the conditions are going to make a blind bit of difference. Certainly not on the hedge side, and possibly not on the slatted fence side. Thanks.
Thanks, Alec. Jim?
Yeah, I think that, quite clearly the decking is going to have an overlooking effect on the adjacent properties. And I would take the view that, whatever decking is erected, it should not reduce the amenity of the neighbours. And in this case, I think the conditions are quite appropriate.
Thank you. Graham, you want to come back in?
The legacy hand, Chair, I'm down now.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else get any points you want to make? No, don't see any other hands. So we agreed then to uphold?
No, I think down the hedge side I'd move an amendment that no increase in fence height is required, as it is not impairing the privacy on that side. The hedge is blocking any view, and to put a extra bit of high fence in the middle of a hedge just lacks common sense. So I'll propose that it's only down the left-hand side.
Okay, is there a seconder for Alec? I don't think you've got a seconder for that, Alec.
Doesn't look like it. No, I'll withdraw it then.
Okay. So therefore, the decision of the PLRB is to uphold the planning permission, as we are satisfied that without adequate screening, the proposed development would be contrary to Policy 5, the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 3. Sorry, Plan 2. Be a bit ahead of myself. And the next stage is that the written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. Okay, thank you. We move on to agenda item 3. That item is a notice of review from Jigsaw Planning on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Campbell. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer's determination to refuse an application for planning permission for the erection of a detached dwelling house at land 65 metres south-southwest of Yett Home, Black Braidwood. Plan advisor will first describe the background to this request for review. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Chair. This local review relates to the refusal of an application for the erection of a detached dwelling house. Detailed planning permission is sought for the erection of a single dwelling on land adjacent to the garden area of Yett Home, Woodhall Road, Braidwood. The site is located out with the settlement boundary of Lower Braidwood and is within the green belt as defined in the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The site is currently part of a larger parcel of grazing land owned by the applicant. Part of the application site is occupied by a small single-storey timber stable. The site is bounded to the east across the public road by open grazing, which also has an extant consent for residential development of 5 houses. To the west and south, the site's bounded by open grazing and mature woodland, and to the north, bounded by Braidwood Burn, which forms the existing settlement boundary to Lower Braidwood. The proposal is for the erection of a 2-storey split-level dwelling on the footprint of the existing stable yard area, which is located to the front of the existing stable building's position and spreads over the adjacent field for approximately a third of the dwelling's footprint. This grazing area is also used to form the new site access to the southeast of the site. In terms of consultation, there were 4 consultations requested. The first was to Roads Development Management, who originally requested the proposed visibility displays to be redrawn and that 2 parking spaces and a turning area were also required to be annotated on a plan. It should be noted that this consultation response on page 111 of the papers, is incorrectly dated with the 27th of January 2021, but was received by planning on 11th of October 2021. Following this, revised plans were submitted on the 26th of October 2021, and following their review, Roads Development Management stated that the visibility display, parking spaces and turning area were now acceptable and that they had no objections to the proposals. Just for a point of housekeeping, this response was missed from the papers, but it is noted that road safety did not form any of the reasons for refusal. The no objection from roads was noted within the report of handling, which is within the review papers, and it's on page 101. The co-authority were also consulted, and they had no objections to the development, as any building works would be out with any high-risk area. But as the proposals were within a low-risk area, they advised that an informative be added to any decision notice if planning was to be approved. The informative requires the co-authority to be notified should any coal mining feature be discovered as part of the construction of the development. Environmental Services had no objection to the proposals, subject to informatives on demolition, noise and contamination being attached to any planning decision if approved. No response was received from Roads Flood Risk Management Team. Statutory neighbour notification was carried out and no representations were made in relation to the application. In assessing this local review, the local review body are respectfully requested to consider the following relevant policies of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, which are, firstly, Policy 4, Green Belt and Rural Area. This policy advises that the purpose of the Green Belt is to direct development to the most appropriate locations and support regeneration, to protect and enhance the character, landscape setting and identity of the settlement, and to protect and provide access to open space. Policy 4 also advises that development in the Greenbelt will be strictly controlled and any proposal should accord with the appropriate uses set out in Scottish planning policy. Policy 4 goes on to advise that the Greenbelt functions primarily for agriculture, forestry, recreation and other uses appropriate to the countryside. Development which does not require to locate in the countryside will be expected to be accommodated within the settlements identified on the proposal's map. Isolated and sporadic development will not be supported. Then we have policy GBRA1, Rural Design and Development. This states that within the Greenbelt and rural area, all proposed developments require to adhere to a set of criteria. There are 7 criteria within this policy, and they are as follows. 1. Development shall be sited in a manner that respects existing built form, land form and local landscape character and setting. 2. Proposed development shall be well related to locally traditional patterns of scale and shall avoid the introduction of suburban style developments into the rural environment. Proposals specifically for residential development should not be isolated or sporadic. 3. Proposals shall be of a high quality, of either traditional or contemporary innovative design which interprets and adapts traditional principles and features. 4. Proposals shall make use of appropriate materials which respect and reinforce local character and identity. 5. Development shall have no unacceptable adverse impacts on existing residential amenity, particularly in terms of overlooking or overshadowing of existing residential properties. 6. Proposals relating to residential development, including extensions and alterations, shall conform to the requirements of the Council's Residential Design Guide, and in particular shall ensure the provision of appropriate private amenity space to all existing and proposed residential developments. Finally, 7. Development proposals shall incorporate suitable boundary treatment and landscaping proposals to minimise the visual impact of the development on the surrounding landscape. Existing trees, woodland and boundary features such as beech and hawthorn hedgerows and stone dykes shall be retained on site. A landscape framework shall be provided where appropriate to demonstrate how the development would fit into the landscape and improve the overall appearance of the site. Then we have Policy 5, Development Management and Placemaking, which advises to ensure that developments take account of the principles of sustainable development. All proposals require to be well designed and integrated with the local area. Proposals should have no significant adverse impacts on the local community and environment. Where appropriate, proposals should include measures to enhance the environment and address the 6 qualities of placemaking. We then have Policy GBRA 5, Redevelopment of previously developed land containing buildings. This policy states that within the green belt and rural area, the council will aim to retain traditional buildings wherever possible. Where it is not possible to retain the building, its facade or other important architectural features shall be kept. In addition, proposals involving the redevelopment of previously developed land containing buildings will be acceptable in principle for modern buildings where it's not desirable to retain an existing building because of its form and layout. For example, non-traditional agricultural commercial buildings which have fallen into disuse or disrepair over an extended period. This includes sites which are visually or environmentally intrusive or detract from the rural and visual amenity of the area, and where there is no realistic prospect of the site being returned to agricultural land or woodland, or the buildings are being converted to form an alternative use appropriate to the countryside. And finally, we have policy GBRA 7, small-scale settlement extensions. This policy states that in certain circumstances within the rural area, proposals for new houses may be acceptable, but this policy does not include application sites within the green belt and is for the rural area only. It is these policies that provide the development plan basis for considering the application. And finally, Chair, the review body should note that the appellant considers a site inspection would be of assistance to the review body. Thank you.
Thank you, James. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with the review. As James had just said, the applicant's agent has indicated that a site inspection would be of assistance to the review body. Taking account of what is in their papers, we have to decide if they do in fact contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a visit to the site. I think that all the information that we have, plus the detailed photographs we have of the site, does provide us with all we need to complete the review, without either a site visit or hearing or further written submissions. Anyone get any comments to make? No, I've got enough information, Alec?
Yeah, just some more information, please. It's not clear from the photographs or any of the information where exactly this site is, because Woodhall Road is quite long, miles. Where is it on that road? How far is the site from Braywood? How far then is the site from Carluke for it to be impinging on the rurality of the area?
Thanks, Alec. David, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to answer some of Alec's questions, if you look at page 166 of the pack, Alec, it'll show you where the site is in relation to the rest of Braidwood. It's actually in Lower Braidwood and it's fairly close to the village. It's actually, you could class as an extension of Woodhall Road at the beginning of Woodhall Road. It's an extension to the village. I hope that helps, Alec.
Sorry, will do if I find it. I haven't. It's 165. Aye, sorry. I hadn't been that far down. God, where is that? Is that near the Craig's parents' house?
It's Lower Braidwood, down towards where the old school is, where Grant Hose lives.
No, according to the application site, he stays up in Braidwood. This is out Woodhall Road, but how far out?
No, right. If you go to Lower Braidwood and you're about to leave to go down towards Crisford, you get to the wee bridge.
Yeah, turn left down Woodhall Road.
Right, that's correct. You turn left, you go down Woodhall Road. That picture shows you that it is 5 houses in. It's not miles down Woodhall Road.
No, right, no, fair enough. I see it now. Apologies, Davey. Right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks for your help on that, David. Clearing that up, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. So we're quite happy to proceed then. We've got enough information.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So can I summarise the points made? The application is for the erection of a detached dwelling house at land 65 metres south-south-east of Yet Home, Braidwood. Adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within the designated green belt. If we consider that there is no valid policy justification to support the proposed dwelling house at this location, and it would not accord with policies 4, 5, GBRA 1, GBRA 5, and GBRA 7, with adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that there is adequate justification for the location of the proposed dwelling house, we could grant planning consent subject to conditions. Our options are to uphold or reverse or vary the planning determination. Anyone get any comments? David?
Thanks, Chair. I'm sympathetic to a certain degree with this application because I would deem it to be an extension to the village. I accept it's in the Greenbelt and the Greenbelt rules are fairly strict. It's not overlooking anybody. There are no roads issues, which I was surprised at. But it is an extension to the existing line of properties. And if it wasn't for the Greenbelt rules, I think planning would have come to a different decision here. So it's a difficult one because I accept that it is Greenbelt and there are the Greenbelt rules and we're supposed to uphold them. But there's also merit in the fact that this is merely an extension to the existing row of properties on that road. So I just ask the committee to bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Alec?
Yeah, sorry, I'm now looking at that picture on 166. What are the 5 green areas opposite these houses? Because unless I'm wrong, I've not been down there for a wee while. I don't think they're there at the moment, are they?
That's the ones that were given planning permission recently.
Right, so they've already got planning permission and we're refusing one straight across the road. Once
Yes.
again, it's lacking common sense. And it's not a green area, it's a livery yard. So I'm agreeing with Davey. I don't think that's impinging at all. And it's already within a built-up area because of the houses that have been granted across the road. So I would be inclined to grant.
Thanks, Alec. Jim?
Yeah, similar to Alec. I mean, the statement that to the east across the road, there's a consent for a housing development. Effectively, that would seem to change the settlement boundaries. When that permission was given, and while normally, I'm really quite hard line about greenbelt developments, this one seems to me to be bang on the borderline. The consent to building across the road would effectively seem to me to have a bigger effect on greenbelt and this development. And I'm inclined to agree with Alec.
Thanks, Jim. Graham?
I'm looking at the 166 and yes, it's close, and the ones that are across the road from it, it's diagonally, it's not directly across the road, it's diagonally across the road. But I'll use the magic word consistency here. At the last planning committee, I spoke about one in Kitterkside in East Kilbride, where actually the house was inside the village envelope, but where he wanted to put the house was inside the green belt. And the fact that part of his land was inside the village envelope was deemed not to be relevant, and that it was refused, the planning application was refused. So the planning department is being consistent, and there was no stomach to overturn that one. So my view would be, in the interest of consistency, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, that gentleman's case, which may well go to appeal, he had part of his own land inside the village envelope. That's not the case here. I believe the entirety of the site is outside the village envelope and is in the green belt, not even part of his land. So if we want to go with consistency, we've got to accept that what the planning officers have deemed, and David's right, the Greenbelt rules. The Greenbelt rules say that should not get consent. The broader point is, and if you listen to what the last planning committee was, that we need a look at village envelopes. We really do need to have a forensic look at all our smaller villages and the village envelopes around them to see that the lines that officers are using to adjudicate are the proper boundaries of a small village or settlement. But on the basis of the rules as they are, the officers have made the right recommendation here. And if we're going to overturn this one, we're going to have to start looking into the back catalogue and start overturning other ones that were not overturned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Alec?
You're muted, Alec.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. Using these well-trodden words in planning, there is no such thing as precedence. So what happens elsewhere is not directly relevant here, Graham.
Consistency. It's called consistency.
Anyone else got any comments to make? So, David, I think you said that it should be reversed. Permission should be granted.
Permission should be granted, in my view, yes.
And you second that, Alec?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay. And Graham thinks that permission should be refused.
Yes, Chair, in accordance with the report that James gave, yes.
Okay. And is there a seconder for Graham?
I'll second it, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, David.
Can I just clarify, Councillor Shearer, what the grounds to reverse the decision are?
That the development on this site would be an extension to the village and should round off the community. Therefore, we should bend the Greenbelt rules.
I would change the word from bend to allow and accept.
Very happy with that phraseology, Alec.
Bend?
All planning is subjective, Graham.
I saw Monique Monica get in a panic with that word there.
Okay, given that Councillor Shearer and Councillor Allison moved first, we'll take that as the motion. So the motion is that the decision to refuse the planning application be reversed on the grounds that development would be an extension to the village and would round off the community and should allow an exception to the Greenbelt rules. And the amendment is that the decision to refuse the planning application be upheld, which has been moved by Councillor Scott and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. So if you can please indicate your preference by roll call. Councillor Alec Allison.
Motion.
Councillor Maureen Devlin.
Amendment.
Councillor Isabel Dorman.
Motion.
Councillor Mark Horsham.
Motion.
Councillor David McLaughlin.
Amendment.
Councillor Graham Scott.
Amendment.
Councillor David Shearer.
Motion.
Councillor Jim Mortaugh.
Motion.
Okay, 3 members voted in favour of the amendment and 5 members voted in favour of the motion. I therefore declare the motion carried.
Thank you, Stuart. Therefore, the decision of the PLRB is to grant planning permission subject to conditions. The next stage is that a written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. So I don't have any other urgent business, so I'd like to thank you all very much for your attendance this morning. Alec?
Yeah, sorry, just something that was said earlier. I was waiting until after the item was passed. Monica, it was suggested there that someone could appeal this decision. My understanding was that this was the appeal process.
Yes, Councillor Allison, I think perhaps Councillor Scott was referring to the application that had previously been at committee when he mentioned appeal. This application, the only way an application to the review can be further challenged is by judicial review, and that would be where the applicant was unhappy with how this decision was made, and that would be on a point. It would be a legal point rather than on the planning merits. It would be on a point of procedure or something akin to that they could make an appeal to the Court of Session, but there's no further right of appeal in terms of the planning application. As I said, I think Councillor Scott was referring to the case that had been at committee previously.
Yeah.
Can I just add clarification to that? That of course, because it was at committee, the appellant can go to
the Department of Planning and Environmental Appeals.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, sorry, that was just wanting to make sure I hadn't got something else wrong. Cheers.
Can I just clarify as well, Chair? Officers will obviously apply relevant conditions.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Well, thank you all very much. Hope you get out to enjoy some of this lovely sunshine. And thanks for that, James. I know it's been your first one, so thanks very much. Thank you for coming along as well, Monica.
Thank you.